Hello, friends. We are here to talk about the latest episode of The Real Housewives of Miami. We pick up where we left off at Julia's event for Martina, the F Cancer event, and they are wrapping up the phone call with Lisa, but she's coming to the event, so we'll get that story after. I did really like watching Martina be surprised by Julia, like the whole play out of it. Like, other than that, it was cute. And even after, like, Julia sits down with Martina, which I was waiting for, like, to give her the, like, I guess connect the dots. Like, hey, remember when you said I forgot about your treatment? Like, oh, this is because, I was doing this. Again, like I said previously, like, I still don't really think that that was a good excuse. I mean, I guess it's relevant, but I didn't think it was a good excuse. I was wondering if it was going to move Martina at all, which it didn't seem like it did, but nothing really seems to move Martina. She's always kind of just like, except for when she was just surprised. So that's why I was happy to see that. But, other than that, it didn't seem like the excuse meant much to her, positive or negative. She's just like, yeah, it was great. Let's move on. So Lisa's there and she's explaining that, what happened with the Lenny thing is that I guess she was in her room changing for the event and she wasn't like fully changed and Lenny came in the room. I guess they have separate rooms in the house or something like that. I don't know what the arrangement is. But Lenny came in her room and she's like, I'm not dressed to get out, and he was, I guess, antagonizing her and saying he wasn't going to get out and this was his house and his mother is in the hallway, which is confusing because last season she was so like pro Lisa, but then by the time the reunion happened she was against Lisa, and now she's like, oh, forget you, like the new girl's going to be a better mother than you. So the story is very confusing, but whatever. So I guess the mom's in the hallway and she's chiming in, antagonizing Lisa as well, and they're like, what are you going to do, call the police, is what Lisa says. And so Lisa's like, yes. So she calls the police and that's what happens. But interesting enough, we get a clip, like our first view of the clip of the article or whatever the heck it was, that says, it's talking about the event, but the headline is like Lisa shoved Lenny. So I saw that, but I was like, okay. I'm like, but maybe that doesn't matter, but we'll get back around to that. We're back in the group now, and I keep forgetting that Gertie had posted about her breast cancer on her social media. So they're talking about that. Larsa gets into the thing of, telling Gertie, like, well, you never told me not to tell anyone. And then she kind of stops with her mouth open. Like, Larsa will make a statement that makes no sense, and she just sits there, like, waiting to say more bullshit. But she says that, and that automatically gets Gertie turned up. She's like, girl, yes, I did. Like, we even joked about the TMZ thing, the joke that you made in reference to telling people, like, we definitely talked about this, and we talked about this. But then Larsa, as Larsa would, with a brain like Larsa, spins it, and she's like, well, weren't you, like, what were you not going to tell everybody? Like, you were going to tell everybody anyway. So, like, trying to make it seem like it wasn't a big deal, and then kind of doubles down on that with another stupid point, and she's like, well, I was telling everybody out of love, like I just wanted to have everybody rally for you. And I'm just like, even if that was the reason, which it didn't really give that because that's not the context, like when she said it to the ladies, it kind of just felt like, not even gossiping to her credit, but it just felt like she was just talking. Like Larsa just talks. So that was just part of the conversation they were having. She never had a conversation with them where it was like, I'm telling you guys this so we can rally around Gertie and really be there for her. It was just more so like, remember Gertie was being weird to me? This is why she was being weird to me. She was just chatting because that's all she does. So Gertie's still stuck on the whole like, girl, you're lying and denying that I told you not to tell anybody, so you're a pathological liar. And I always get stuck on the fact that Larsa will not admit that she had work done to her butt. So whenever the term liar and Larsa come up, like I have a hard time not agreeing. And also, like, I understand Gertie's frustration is this because she has to argue with Larsa, which I know has to be one of the most frustrating things in the world, just because of the way that Larsa thinks. But then the group, not to shoot the messenger, as Adriana was saying, but still, like, the group is kind of like trying to bring it down, and they're like, well, she did, more so Lisa, but she's like, she did meaning out of love, and like it wasn't a bad thing, blah blah. But that's not even the point. Like, the point of the matter is she shouldn't have said anything in the first place. It was not her information to share. So I don't know where that message is getting lost. Like, I understand them trying to mediate, but fine, but no, also, like, no, Larsa's wrong. There are a lot of scenes in this episode that were different for me, which is not necessarily bad, but it was a lot of stuff where I was just like, naturally, why am I watching this? I say all that to say, we get a scene of Lisa with Larsa, and there with Adriana too, which is a weird group link up, but whatever. Lisa is looking at a $7 million home. So I don't know, and a lot of times you would think like, oh, maybe they're doing that for TV just for the glitz and the glam, but then it's also like it's 2023. I feel like we're way beyond that like surface level of watching reality TV. Like we would easily see through that. So then I'm like, I feel like she is serious. Like she's seriously looking at a $7 million home, thinking that this is a decision that she was going to make. And this is when my wheels started churning, and I'm like, okay, because for a long time, like after last season, I was giving Lisa a lot of a pass, like she means well. Like, you know what I'm saying? She means well, like her head's in the right place. But now I'm starting to think like Lisa has a very high level of delusion. In my notes, I literally just said Lisa needs to BFFR. And if you don't know what that is, go to TikTok or Twitter. So they sit down and they start talking about Gertie in a way that I get so disgusted every time Larsa says it. She's like, you know, Gertie was so angry with me. And Lisa even echoes it like, yeah, very angry with me as well. And it's like, angry, like that's definitely not the adjective to use. Like I feel like it's such a gaslight to Gertie. Like she's not supposed to be upset, like with the both of y'all collectively and separately. Like Larsa, you're not smart. Like something is going on that's causing you to say very idiotic things, and that's frustrating. Like it's very hard to have a conversation with somebody like you. And then Lisa, you are, again, don't shoot the messenger, fair, but you are almost kind of justifying what Larsa did, and that's frustrating because what Larsa did is so ridiculous, and the fact that Larsa feels like she did nothing wrong is so ridiculous. So for you to come in on the back end, it's astronomical. So honestly, the fact that Gertie can even form words to have this angry tone at y'all is she's stronger than most. Lisa then tells us that we're going to Palm Beach because allegedly she's working on some fragrance and it's happening in Palm Beach, so whatever. Another very weird group, like this is when it really clicked for me, and I literally wrote in my group, my notes, this is such a random group, but it's Nicole, Alexia, and Julia. And they go do some event that I wasn't paying attention to, but then they sit down and they start having a conversation, the thing that we care about. While they're sitting there though, Lisa calls to invite them to Palm Beach, so that's out the way, check. But interestingly enough, and I'm starting to see now where the cast is going to fall on this, especially based on what happened last season, it's interesting to see this happening. Alexia says, you know, well, if we're going to go on this trip, can you promise not to bring up Lenny? So I'm like, okay. And Lisa just kind of passively says, like, I'm over it. But it's like, we know she's not. Another weird group, we get Gertie, Kiki, and Marisol. And at first, as I was watching, I was like, oh, no, Marisol, this episode. And I was like, but she's here. And of course, she starts off by being, I wasn't going to be too nitpicky about this, but I'm just like Marisol just comes off so negative to me. But Kiki was telling us how she had a good night with a young gentleman the night before, and Marisol's like, oh, just keep it to yourself, da-da-da. And I love that Kiki read her in a confessional, because it's like, girl, like, we're having girl chat. Like, be quiet. They start talking about Julia's event, and they, you know, make reference to the fact that Marisol wasn't there. And so Marisol's like, yeah, well, you know, I would have loved to have been there, but I had a medical procedure. And they're like, well, what was it? And she's like, well, that's personal. And Kiki, again, reading her in the confessional, like, girl, very convenient, obviously has to do with Adriana. Check. We move on. But this, like, personal medical thing that Marisol brings up segues us into, you know, Gertie talking about being upset with Larsa again. And I'm like, great, something substantive. And I'm also like, these ladies aren't friends. So I love that Gertie got to come to this scene, likely because it was producer implemented, like, okay, you guys need to link up, we need to shake up the dynamics. I like that she came with these people that she's not even friends with and just took over the scene and was like, well, while we're here, let's just talk about my tea. Good for you, Gertie. And it was nice to see, just because they are the two, like, black girls on the cast, and I again, I started watching last season, so I was just like, you don't really get much dynamic between Gertie and Kiki. Like, they don't really hang, and they're on opposite sides of the group. So nice to see, like, Kiki feel where Gertie is coming from, not because they're black girls, but just because, like, I don't see them interact at all, and now that they're interacting, it's on this level. So I'm like, okay, that's nice. I like that. But I do, they gave Gertie good advice because obviously she was upset. I mean, I don't think that she's going too overboard. So I don't really like everybody trying to pacify her. But I won't say that's what Marisol and Kiki were doing. I think they were literally just letting her know, like, we just don't want you to be upset about it. So I think that's fine. But Gertie's like, I'm disgusted by Larsa, and I would have to agree with that. So then we get Alexia and Julia shopping, which I just feel like is so calculated, most likely on Alexia's part, because it's just such a redemption. Like, you're really trying to get a redemption from last season. Like, I understand you saying, like, oh my gosh, like, I always wanted to be friends with Julia, which still hasn't been substantiated for me. But she's like, I feel like Alexia was hiding her from me, so I didn't get to know how, like, amazing she was, and she's so she has so many layers, and I really want to get to know her. And it's just like, oh, Alexia, girl, please. In a very random, unexpected turn of event, they're kikiing and they're cackling like Alexia's really going for it, at least for now. And they are talking about rooming together when they get to Palm Beach. And, Alexia is the one to bring up, like, oh, well, I don't know, like, I haven't talked to Marisol about it, and you haven't talked to Adriana about it, like, ha 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 ha. And at first I was like, okay, harmless, like, I think it's funny to kind of poke fun at that. I wasn't thinking too much into it. But then she started literally saying, like, well, I'm gonna have to check in with Todd, and not even just Todd, like Marisol, like, I need to check in with both of them. And I'm like, oh, you're for real, like, oh, this is a real conversation. And then she even goes further to say, like, like, she starts backing up off of it. Like, this is when, the commitment is slowing down. And she's like, maybe even just, like, get connecting rooms. So at that point, I'm like, okay, she ain't trying to room with Julia. And, I'm thinking of it more so as a because this is fake and she doesn't want to be friends with Julia thing. But then Julia brings up that, that's weird. Like, why is she feeling that way? And we learned a little bit about that later. And at first I was like, if I was Julia, would I have felt that way? I don't know. But I'm like, she obviously felt that way for a reason, and that's her intuition and her feelings, so nobody can take that away from her. So I'm like, there obviously has to be something there for her worth looking into. Time for the trip. The ladies are linking up, I think, at Jody's house. And, while they're there, what's her name? Marisol comes in, and she doesn't speak to Adriana. She runs to the bathroom, very awkwardly avoiding her. And then we get some confessionals from Gertie and Larsa, making it clear they're going to avoid each other. And it's so weird to me that Larsa even has a position on this, because Gertie hasn't done anything to you. They take, like, 3 separate cars, and they were, like, in a Rolls Royce with Lisa, and there starts to be a discussion of, like, oh, is this Lenny's car? And I'm like, oh, they are so messy. And she's like, well, it's our car technically, but his name's on it. So I'm like, it's Lenny's car. So the only time, to Lisa's point, this is the only time she didn't bring up Lenny. They started this, so now we got to talk about Lenny. So she starts talking about the police thing because, Marisol wasn't at the event when she was telling them about it. So she retells the story, and Marisol is clocking, and they kind of get which I was so shocked by. We get the receipt again, like the headline. I don't know if it was a different one or there were other ones. I think there were additionals. I don't know. But then we get into the tea of it, of, like, all the ladies in the confessional, and they're all kind of clocking the same tea. Tea I clocked was at the event, the indiscretion between Lenny and Lisa happened on May 10th, and that's my birthday. So I was focused on that. But the ladies are just kind of saying, and Marisol's kind of spearheading, that the way that Lisa is telling the story is as if Lenny was the aggressor, right? But it seems like Lisa was the aggressor based on, like, the report and the suits or the filing in the court or whatever. It seems like, because it said something like she kind of chased him out the room and kept pursuing him while he was gone, like trying to antagonize him. So the stories are definitely different. And it's like, I don't necessarily want to make a position on it, but I would have to say it's Lisa's verbal story versus what's in court documents. Does that mean anything? No. But one at this current moment has a little bit more weight than the other. And it's not. Basically, Marisol has said, like, it seems like they trigger each other or antagonize each. She didn't say antagonize, but I take it to mean antagonize. Marisol said it seems like they antagonize each other, and that's something that I would have to agree with. But it's weird because Lisa's characterizing it as like, I think Lenny's trying to make me crazy. And she could have a point. Like, I don't know. I'm not there. None of us are there. But based on what we saw last season and based on how we kind of see Lisa carrying on again this season, sometimes it feels like Lisa construes these things that are not necessarily happening. Like, in general, at its base, I feel like Lisa thinks that Lenny cares more than he actually does. Like, I think she feels like he's more involved mentally in what's happening than he actually does. Sometimes it feels like she's explaining like a cat and mouse things. That's the vibe that I get when she talks about it. Like, she's very involved to the point where it feels like she feels like it's a thing. Like, Lenny is really trying to get under her skin. And I don't know that again, I don't have all the information, but I don't know if I feel like Lenny is that involved with Lisa. I feel like Lenny is involved in his new girl, but I don't know. Right? Maybe it's because we're only hearing from Lisa, but that's a vibe that I get. Because she talks about it so damn much. But she then starts talking about Jody, and I'm like, what a surprise. And she's just like, I'm so lucky to have him. Like, he's perfect in every way, blah, blah, blah. And Marisol's like, this is the only time I'm really agreeing with Marisol. Like, she does have perspective. And she's like, well, how are we going to sustain that relationship? Because, like, you can't keep talking to him forever about all this Lenny stuff. Like, every person, I like that she said person, because it's not specific to just like a man or like a partner or like a woman. Anybody would be, everybody has their limits. So, any person would be fed up with hearing about their friends or significant others or partners or whatever's old partner. Like, you don't want to keep hearing about the same old thing that doesn't have anything to do with me at its base. Right? So if I'm dating you and I'm pursuing you as Jody is, and I'm looking to buy a house with you and move forward with you, I damn sure don't want to keep hearing about your ex-husband. Like, there's one thing that you have to go through the divorce and do the custody stuff, and it's happening at current. So obviously you're going to have feelings and you're going to want to vent and things are going to be happening. But the way that Lisa, like I said, Lisa is always giving a narrative of like, oh, Lenny's playing with me. Like, Lenny's trying to get under my skin. And that's a weird conversation to be having. Like, let's just talk about maybe Lenny pissed you off in court and it's taking a long time for this to get done. Not like I actively think Lenny is trying to play cat and mouse with me. That's weird to be saying, Lisa. But both Marisol and Gertie are pretty much saying this and weighing in. And they're also speaking of a place of knowing. I like that they're saying that, like, we've experienced it, we know, so we're just, giving you advice. And, Lisa's like, you guys are being mean, you guys are being negative, and she's in her confessional like, it's none of their business, like, who cares, like, they talk to their partners about everything. So that's when I'm really like, yeah, like, Lisa is in, I don't even know if this is the best word, but I'm like, Lisa is in a state of delusion. Like, the way she sees things is very peculiar to me. But I like how Marisol circles that back around, like, girl, even if you're not considering Jody, which you're clearly not, it's toxic for you. Like, to still be talking about this so much. Like, it's gonna affect you. But, Lisa's like, I'm getting overwhelmed, I'm getting anxious, I don't want to talk about it anymore. So she knows. But girl, come on, cut it. Finally, they get to the house, and they are picking their rooms. Everybody has to share. Like, everybody has a pair. And so, Julia brings up, obviously, that she's not going to run and look for a room because she knows she's not room with Alexia like she thought. We get a flashback to them in the car, and very awkwardly, Julia asks, like, hey, so are we rooming together or not, in the car to Alexia. And Alexia starts stuttering, as we know her to do. She stuttered so much last reunion. Oh my God, like, I'm being taken back. But Alexia starts stuttering. And she's like, oh no, I'm gonna room with Marisol. And so Julia is speaking about it to Adriana. And again, I'm still thinking, like, would I feel some type of way? But I'm like, I'm not going to invalidate how Julia is feeling because, again, she feels that way for some reason. But then she brings up a really good point that, Alexia brought up the Todd thing not once but twice and on two different days, right? Like, she's saying, like, I got to ask Todd's permission. And it's like, if she had said it once, it would feel more so like it was in jest and it was a joke in the moment. But she said it twice. So that feels like a thing, and I would have to agree with that. And so, of course, we find out that, Julia's wondering if Alexia is taking it this route because she's a lesbian. And I was wondering if, because Adriana's not in a good place with Alexia, she was going to kind of take the vindictive route and kind of really feed into that, whether she believed it or not. But it really felt like she was just kind of leveling with Julia authentically, like, okay, well, yeah, that is weird, like, and I don't know why she would feel some type of way about that. So I can respect that position of what Adriana took. Like, I don't think she was pouring gasoline on the fire. So I am, again, Julia, she obviously is going to feel this type of way for a reason, and I'm interested to see. We haven't heard anything from Alexia in the alternative or any type of description or anything. They didn't even give any confessionals about it, so I'm sure we'll get into it later. And I'm interested to see what is said about it. But I thought it was a pretty good episode. I like that, it was random and it had me a little distracted. But I like that the production obviously pushed them this episode to kind of film in different groups that you wouldn't expect. So I'm not mad at that. It just takes some getting used to. I'm a context girly, so I would like to know why it's happening besides like breaking the fourth wall. Because then it distracts me because I'm wondering, like, why is Alexia out to lunch with Julia? But it's, and why is Adriana going house shopping with Larsa and Lisa? So, that's all. But other than that, it was a good episode. I enjoyed it. And we will see what happens in the next one.